to pick up where we left off, we were talking about demand last time. Now we need to look at the supply side of the market before we can put them together and do some really kooky stuff with that. So, we talked about demand, we looked at a demand schedule, we constructed a demand curve. Supply is exactly the same, but the complete opposite, which will make sense, I hope, in just a moment. Alright, so you're starting with the same basic graph that we always have, pretend that's a 0. And here's your Q. Now, the demand curve sloped down. The law of demand says that when prices are high, the quantity demanded is low. When prices are low, the quantity demanded is high. Because remember, what motivates the buyer is, hey, I want more stuff cheaper, woohoo! The reason the supply curve is going to be the exact opposite is because your seller has an opposite motivation. So while your demand curve slopes down, your supply curve slopes up. Because your seller would rather sell you more stuff at a high price and less stuff at a low price. More stuff, high price, woohoo, make money. So your law of supply is the exact opposite of your law of demand. Law of supply says that quantity supplied will be greater at higher prices, quantity supplied will be lower at lower prices. Quantity supplied is a point on your supply curve. Let me clean that up a little bit. Okay, so every point on this curve represents a combination of a price level and a quantity supply. And if we set that up in the little table like we did before with demand, you could do the same thing with an individual seller with how much they're willing to supply at each price and then graph it, and this is what you would get. How do you go from individual supply to market supply? The same way we did it with demand. You would take individual suppliers, and let's say we're talking about the local market for coffee. Focusing on the supply side. We can start with McDonald's. And then we can add maybe a little bit steeper, Dunkin' Donuts. Because everyone runs on Dunkin'. Well, maybe. They sell coffee. And we can add Starbucks, which here is on just about every corner.
You mean the Starbucks, the Starbucks, the Starbucks, the Starbucks?
Okay, you can stop. Okay. So if we add these three supply curves together horizontally, just like we said that the market demand is a horizontal summation of individual demand curves, the market supply is the horizontal summation, meaning you're adding across of your individual supply curves. So how do we go from these three stores to a market supply? Pick a price level. You have this quantity supplied, we have this quantity supplied, we have this quantity supplied. 1, 2, 3. Q1 plus Q2 plus Q3, we're talking about quantity supplied if you want to be real picky, gives us the total QS at that first price level. We can call him P1. A horizontal summation. Now, are you adding the price together? No, because then you're going to get some ridiculously inflated price. Remember, price, just like we said with the demand curve, price is the independent variable. Price impacts supply. Supply does not impact price. Okay, not for an individual curve, that's not how it works. But It's the same principles as the demand curves. We're just looking at the other side of the market. All right. Just like with demand, we said that there are things that cause a demand curve to shift. There are factors which cause your supply curve to shift as well. Now, I do not recommend that you try to memorize every single possibility for what can shift a supply curve. It's too much detail. You can't possibly learn them all. Your brain cannot hold on to that much little picky, disconnected stuff up there. It's like confetti in your brain. You don't have room for it. What you want to do instead is understand one basic principle with a supply curve. And that is that anything that makes it cheaper or easier to produce and sell a product will increase supply. Cheaper, easier, will increase your supply. Anything that makes it more expensive and more difficult will decrease it. Now, there are an awful lot of things that we can put in one category or the other. For example, something that makes it cheaper or easier to produce. What about a government subsidy? Okay. A government subsidy is a monetary payment to help you produce. That makes it cheaper.
You're really getting crowded over there.
I know.
So you might want okay.
I know.
All right, go ahead.
Government subsidy makes it cheaper to produce. You'll want to produce more. All right? So keeping this in the same color scheme, if we increase supply, and don't think of it as an up or down shift because you will get it backwards. An increase is to the right, you're moving away from zero. A decrease is to the left or toward zero. So that's a subsidy. What if we go with, to make it more expensive, a tax increase? Uh-oh. We increase taxes on production. Let's say, for example, that we're talking about an industry that puts out a lot of pollution, and the government says, we're going to tax you so that you'll cut back on how much you're polluting. Makes it more expensive to do business. You're going to go left. That means at every price level, the amount that you are willing and able to supply has decreased. Okay? So taxes and subsidies are two examples of things that you might see for this. And I'm going to go through a few other examples in just a minute. But just remember, cheaper, easier, increase. Expensive and harder, decrease. If you just remember that, that will go a long way to getting correct any question that you see on a test on this.